Welcome to the Payments Podcast. I'm your host, Bottom Line Managing Editor, Owen McDonald. Businesses keep clamoring for better ways to pay. That task falls to accounts payable teams that rely more and more on ePayables to get the job done. Keeping a finger on the pulse of these developments, the industry eagerly awaits the annual State of ePayables report from Ardent Partners. We're delighted to have Andrew Bartolini, founder and chief research officer at Ardent Partners, as our guest to highlight findings from the new State of ePayables Report 2025. Andrew Bartolini, welcome to the Payments Podcast.
Oh, and thank you for having me. Excited to talk about some of the new research.
Andrew, it's an incredibly detailed 40-page report. A lot of information. Let me ask you to give us some impressions of the overall state of ePayables in 2025 as you found it. What's working? What needs work according to your latest research?
Great question, right? So, this is actually our 20th annual edition, right? So something I've dedicated the majority of my professional career to, and it's been my great privilege to study and work with folks working in finance and P2P and accounts payable and payments. And, so we view this report as a continuum, right? And so the subtitle of the report, I think, sums up the state of ePayables, and that is AP's unfinished journey, right? If I were to look back 20 years ago, right, or 2006 when I first did this study, we have come such an extraordinarily long way from there. But the journey's not finished. There's still so much to do, and there are extraordinary opportunities, even for the top performers, right? And I continue to just look at the AP function as just this wide open, huge opportunity to continue to add more value. The good news is that, majority of organizations think of their AP departments as adding value, right? Exceptional value, very valuable, right? That's about 70% of organizations. But even within that, huge opportunities to move forward from an automation standpoint, from an opportunity to begin to start to organize and manage the AP department like you see other professionally run organizations, right? With multi-year strategic plans, with key linkage to internal and external partners and stakeholders, and with clear vision of what you're trying to accomplish in the year and making sure that that's aligned to what's important to the business.
Right. Is there one finding that really blew you away? And if so, what is it and why did you find it surprising?
I'd say that, again, looking at over the long arc, right, AP has continued to move as a profession, up and to the right, but at a relatively slow pace. The thing that continues to surprise me is the amount of paper that still remains, or manual processes that remain in a typical AP department or AP operation. We have quantified and evaluated the impact of technology on the across the full AP process, on invoice receipt, on the processing, and on the payment side. And there's very clear ROIs, from just moderate usage and some level of proficiency. And yet, a fully automated AP department or operation is still the exception and not the rule, right? So, it's not surprising to me because I've been doing this research for 20 years, but it is one of those great questions. And we have had some industry drivers, most recently the pandemic, that have driven the profession forward. And so we've moved off of a plateau, and there's some really nice momentum, but more can certainly be done.
The report identifies several quote-unquote power couples in B2B payments, such as AP and treasury and AP and procurement, to name two. Explain the importance of calling out these interdependent pairings, Andrew.
Right. So given the state of the world and the level of competition and so many companies, even small and mid-sized companies, really competing in the global market, it's really, incumbent upon, everybody working within an organization to be rowing in the same direction. One of the things that, has driven AP's growth over the years is that there's been a great acknowledgement that, can be a hub of operational efficiency. But there's also an extraordinary amount of valuable information that AP processes and creates. Valuable to AP from an operational standpoint, right? Can we review and understand who our top performers are and start to reward them and model their behaviors within the rest of the organization? But then there's extraordinarily valuable information to other groups. And you named the two that we called out in the report, and the two that are most traditionally aligned with AP. The first is procurement, right? So when you think about your strategic supplier relationships and the orders that they process and deliver and execute on, and the invoices that they then send, from a supplier standpoint, they have a single relationship with your company, right? With the buying organization, with the buyer of their goods and services. If there are blips in that transaction, if there are blips in that relationship, their vested interest in helping your company perform erodes. And so there's extraordinarily valuable information for procurement that AP has, processes, and manages to help them make smarter sourcing decisions and supplier management decisions. The one that less organizations pay attention to, and they really should be, is the AP and treasury relationship. Right, we've been arguing at Ardent Partners that AP should have a dotted line reporting into treasury, or if you don't have a treasurer, right, you're a mid-market company, the controller or the CFO, whoever is managing cash, right? The amount of money that AP disperses, for the typical organization is an extraordinarily high percentage, right? If you take out payroll, it's almost assured that AP is the disbursement engine for your organization, the primary disbursement engine. Ever since inflation and the central banks around the world increasing interest rates, there's now a real cost of capital and a financial impact based upon how and when you pay your suppliers. So strategic B2B payments, or how you pay your suppliers or vendors, has become a strategic business function. And so it's important that these two groups are aligned.
Excellent point. I also found this interesting. Fear of fraud and risk clocked in at only 31% behind approval times, cited as a problem by nearly half of respondents, 49%, and invoice exceptions cited by 48%. Does that 31% finding indicate that we're having more success in stopping fraud, Andrew? If not, why is fraud suddenly dropping well below things like approval times and invoice exceptions?
When you do market research, right, one of the things that you come to understand as it relates to risk and avoiding the bad things, they often are not top of mind until they're front and center. So the short answer is no. They've not solved fraud risk, and fraud risk is as high as it's ever been. I think somewhere close to 2/3 of AP organizations and procurement organizations are expecting an increase in fraud attempts over the next 24 months. So this is something that is not going to go away, right? So the pandemic and having people working from home and no longer centrally located, and the face-to-face business meetings has really opened the Pandora's box for fraudsters. When you look at AI can be used for good on the fraud prevention, right? So detecting anomalies and spotting things that the human eye or some systems may not have in place today. But AI can also be used by the fraudsters. And so the reality is, unless they've been hit, right? And many organizations don't know that they have been, in fact, hit with attempts or have actually, made payments by mistake. It's not top of mind. But fraud risk is highly topical and very important. And the line of defense, number one, for fraud risk is having systems in place that automate these processes so that you know who and where you're sending your payments.
The report notes, and I quote, "The potential for every AP team to expand its role in key areas is significant, yet far too many remain on the outside looking in," end quote. That's quite a statement. Andrew, please unlock that with some pertinent, telling insights, if you would.
So we just hit upon, the AP and treasury relationship and the AP and procurement relationship. And those are two specific areas, right? Cash management and supplier management, right? AP's command over cash disbursements to suppliers makes it one of the most impactful functions on cash management, right? So that's working capital optimization, liquidity, and cash forecasting. The timing of your B2B payments should be a strategic lever that's actively managed, given the real cost of capital for all companies in 2025, right? So in advanced organizations, Treasury and AP are working in sync to optimize payment runs and align disbursements with broader liquidity goals. Payment precision can be a source of financial advantage, right? So it's not just paying your suppliers slower. There may be compelling reasons why you need to pay your suppliers sooner, and having that agility becomes very important. So cash management, important function. AP should be involved, right? Not directing, but providing the inputs and information that allows the decisions to be made. Likewise, supplier management. Over the years, right? So Ardent Partners, we focus on the source to pay, or sourcing through payment, and that's the entirety of what we focus on. So that means we do a fair amount of research on the procurement side. Over over the past 20 years, and maybe a little bit longer than that, the rise of global supply chains and specialization means that every company is much more reliant on their suppliers' performance, their products and services for both revenue, product and delivery quality, and customer satisfaction, right? So with supplier management, right, you want to make sure that your strategic suppliers are aligned with you, your company, and the business. And if there's a lot of friction and heartburn around the invoice process, right? No visibility into when we're going to get paid, no sense of, the status of the invoice. You don't want to be the high cost, difficult customer to your strategic suppliers. Those are the two big examples, and we go into a few other areas as well. I think that AP has an opportunity to expand beyond just the transaction and become these much stronger partners.
And we're hearing that more and more, of course. Last question. The report notes that a majority of AP leaders polled said AI will have anything from a significant to a transformational impact on the accounts payable function. Andrew, to what extent and in what time frame do you expect a critical mass of AP teams to adopt AI solutions?
So for the AI technology, adoption rates are going to be significantly higher than your classic solutions that automated some or all of the AP process. We have in place today, right? So our research shows that almost half, right? So 44% of AP departments are using AI today. About another third of the market is expecting to within the next 12 months. And so part of the reason why the adoption rates are happening at a much more advanced clip than classic enterprise software is how AI is delivered, right? So AI, is technology, but it's a series of capabilities that is being delivered through the systems that AP organizations are using to receive, process, and pay. And so, that makes it a technology that you ignore at your own peril, right? Because it is going to come in, if you're using technology today, it's likely that AI capabilities are already starting to emerge in the latest releases or are on the roadmap. It's a little bit daunting, but it's also very exciting because of the longer term opportunity of what AI is going to deliver. And so it's been my experience doing research on software and working in this industry for more than 25 years that there's typically a longer ramp up time than expected. So AI is starting to make a mark and will make a mark for many AP organizations in 2025. But that mark is going to be shaving 15% of time off of this task and adding some value here and there. And over the next couple of years, we're going to see the momentum of all of the value that AI is delivering becoming really significant. These transformational technologies tend to disappoint in the short term, but over the long term, wildly over deliver. And our perspective is that AI, 5-10 years out, is really going to deliver something, transformational, something on the order of living in a world of pre-internet, early 90s, and post-internet, early 2000s.
A bold prediction, but certainly you're not alone in thinking that. In a relatively short time, accounts payable has gone from a mundane back office chore to having a seat at the big table for setting strategy and policy. Moreover, there are ways to have a best-in-class AP operation. To achieve that, we urge you to download the State of ePayables 2025 report from Ardent Partners. Our thanks to a terrific guest, Andrew Bartolini, founder and chief research officer at Ardent Partners. To our audience, the smartest people in B2B payments, thanks for listening. Hit subscribe. Catch us again on your favorite podcast platforms, including Apple and Spotify. Bye for now.